By the time the investigation entered its next phase, the atmosphere had shifted from raw urgency to something colder and more strategic, as if the case itself had taken a breath and recalibrated. And inside the operational briefings, the tone grew quieter, but more intense, because this is the stage where headlines may slow, but the real intellectual battle begins, where analysts stop asking only what happened and start asking why, mapping behavioral patterns, reconstructing emotional landscapes, exploring motive without leaping to conclusions. And in that analytical deep dive, the house once again becomes central, not just as a physical location, but as a psychological environment, a place where routine once reigned and where any disruption, no matter how subtle, might reveal intent. And this is why conversations about whether it should have remained sealed indefinitely resurface in waves, not necessarily as criticism, but as a reflection of how deeply people understand that first. Impressions can shape entire cases, because if the initial hours are about containment, the following days are about interpretation, about ensuring that every fiber collected, every timestamp reviewed, every neighbor's recollection is filtered through disciplined scrutiny rather than emotional assumption. And behind closed doors, investigators debate probabilities, construct timelines that stretch and contract like elastic, testing each version against known facts until inconsistencies either collapse or crystallize into leads. What makes this phase so gripping is that it unfolds largely out of sight, invisible to cameras and commentators. Yet it is here that cases are often won or lost, and securing a residence becomes less about tape on a doorway and more about intellectual preservation, guarding the integrity of evidence analysis, protecting the chain of custody, verifying lab results twice, sometimes three times, because once a theory takes hold publicly, it can distort perception. And seasoned investigators know that resisting premature narrative is as important as chasing clues. And so while the public conversation may orbit around whether the home should have been locked down until absolute closure, the professionals are asking whether every data point extracted from that environment withstands scrutiny under courtroom standards, because justice is not merely about discovery, it is about proof that survives challenge, and that standard demands patience that can feel agonizing from the outside. Looking in, meanwhile, the emotional temperature among supporters and community members fluctuates between hope and frustration as organized searches evolve into more targeted efforts guided by emerging information. And each development, no matter how incremental, sends ripples through social platforms and news cycles, reigniting debate and renewing calls for transparency. And this is where leadership communication becomes critical, because too much detail can compromise progress while too little can erode trust, and striking that balance is an art form shaped by experience, legal counsel, and strategic foresight. And in this balancing act, the symbolism of the home continues to loom large, representing both the origin of the mystery and the anchor point to which all speculation returns, as if within its walls lies a definitive answer waiting for the right analytical key to unlock it. Behind the scenes, technology plays an increasingly prominent role, from advanced forensic testing to digital reconstruction tools that simulate movement patterns and environmental conditions. And in many modern investigations, it is not dramatic breakthroughs, but microscopic consistencies that tip the scale. A partial print aligning with a database entry, a vehicle sighting correlating with license plate recognition data, and as each piece slots tentatively into place, investigators must remain vigilant against confirmation bias, ensuring that the desire for resolution does not eclipse objectivity. Because once public expectation builds, the pressure to deliver can subtly influence interpretation, and safeguarding against that influence is part of the professional discipline that defines serious investigative work. As commentators revisit earlier moments, those first hours, the initial perimeter decisions, the pace of securing the scene, the conversation matures into something more nuanced, recognizing that hindsight often grants clarity unavailable in real time. And while some still argue that an indefinite lockdown might have prevented uncertainty, others acknowledge that investigations operate within constitutional frameworks and logistical realities that rarely allow absolute control. And this duality becomes part of the narrative itself, illustrating how complex, high profile cases are shaped as much by perception as by procedure, and how the public's instinct for immediate containment sometimes collides with the legal thresholds required for sustained action. Through it all, the central human element remains unchanged: a family waiting for definitive answers, investigators committed to following every viable lead, and a community that refuses to let the story fade into background noise. And it is this persistence, quiet, methodical, sometimes unseen, that ultimately defines whether truth emerges intact, because securing a home, while symbolically powerful, is only one chapter in a much larger process, a process that demands resilience not just from officials, but from everyone emotionally invested in the outcome.